Hello, everybody. I'm John Denny with the Telos Corporation, and this is Xacta Tidbits. Welcome to part 4 of our controls implementation series. This is the final part of the series, and here we're going to be discussing and showing you how you can put in your supplementary documentation or your supplementary artifacts for all of your controls implementation. So as you're going through and you're answering how you put these controls in place, we're going to show you the best practices for taking those supplementary documents, whether it's a ConOp or an SOP or some other documentation, and how to turn around and associate that to specific controls for your implementation purposes. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started with part 4 of our controls implementation, all about supplementary artifacts.
All right, let's get started with our part 4. We are inside of Xacta 360, and we are going to go directly into our Xacta Tidbits project. Once we're in our Xacta Tidbits project, I'm going to make sure I'm in the ISO role for myself because that is what was assigned my controls to. So if you remember, when we were walking through our different parts of the controls implementation, we did assign some controls to ourselves against John Denny and then also against the ISO role. And I want to make sure that I have all of those against the ISO role. Now, before we get started with supplementary artifacts, we do need to take a moment to address where the supplementary artifacts are going to show up inside of Xacta 360. Now, as a site personnel, which would be with the role of ISM, ISO, PM, or ISE, those will all have access to a task called General Information. And if we go into General Information, inside here we have a step, which is step number 4, Manage Project Artifacts. So when we click here, this is where all of our supplementary documentation or artifacts will be showing up inside of our project. Now, the reason why I'm showing you this right now is because I want to show you that it's completely blank. There are no artifacts in here at the moment. Now, what we're going to be doing here is showing you why we're doing what we're doing. When we work with our project artifacts for controls implementation, so let's go into Security Control Implementation, and let's go directly to Controls Implementation. Now, just like I always do, I'm going to start off here by sorting by Control ID. And what we're going to assume is that we have some kind of an SOP that is going to cover all of our access control stuff, our AC series of controls, so access control policies and procedures. Now, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 different controls here for access control policy and procedures. And all 4 of these controls are going to be covered by the same SOP. Now, normally what we would do is go in here and say, well, I have this AC1A1 control. I need to add in a supplementary artifact. And I would go right here and I would click here and say to add this artifact in. So I'm going to go ahead and plus the artifact. And this time I'm going to choose a file. The file I'm going to choose is an SOP. And I'm just going to put in here in the description, SOP covers all access control policy and procedures. So we're just going to assume that this one covers all of those policies and procedures. Now I could classify this document if I needed to. I'm going to leave it without any classification markings. So we'll go ahead and save this. And now we have saved this SOP here. And we can see if we click off of that control and onto another one and we click back onto it, we now have one artifact. We have one artifact against this control. And when we click on it, there is the artifact that we have. And what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our artifacts page, our manage project artifacts, to see that this has shown up. So we're just going to go right back out to our projects. And inside our Xacta Tidbits project, remember it's inside general information here. And in general information, we're going to go to this manage project artifacts. And here we can see there's the SOP1. So this has been added in as a supplementary document, and it is linked to something. So we can see here under the links column that this SOP has been linked to something. And if I click on the number 1, it tells me that it's been linked to the AC1A1 Access Control Policy and Procedure. So everything looks good so far. However, things are going to start to go a little bit sideways here when we try to finish this out. If we go back into controls implementation, we're going to resort, and we know that we have this control, but we still have 3 others that we have to do this to. So what we're going to do is we're going to attach that artifact again. So we're going to attach this artifact to the AC1A2. Now this is the way that you would think that you're supposed to do this. So we would just click on the artifacts again, click the plus button, we would choose the file, and here's the SOP document. We would click the save button, there's the SOP document, it has been saved, and now I have the SOP document against my first AC1 control, and I have the same document against my other AC1 control as well. Now this looks good because we have the artifact is in here against both of these controls, but the problem is going to come when we start to look at the project artifacts again. When we go back to the project artifacts, we're going to see in our manage project artifacts again, now we see that SOP is in here twice. And that's not good because the more times that I attach this artifact, the more times it's going to show up inside of my managed project artifacts, and the more times that it's just going to create these duplicate documents in there. I don't want duplicate documents in here. So this is what we don't want to do. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to delete these documents out of here. So we're just going to delete both of these out and we're going to start fresh. So we're going to start fresh here with nothing inside of our managed project artifacts. Now there's a couple of different ways that we can do this for controls implementation, and I'm going to show you the easiest of the 2 methods to do this. Now when we do go back into project artifacts, or excuse me, back into our project, we're going to go back to security controls implementation, back to controls implementation, and this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to assume that I have an SOP or some other document that is going to cover something in my controls. And in this case, we're going to say that it's going to cover all of our IR controls because I have been assigned to all of the IR family of controls here. All of them. That's a lot of controls. So what we're going to do here is we are going to assign one artifact against all of these controls. Now the first thing I want to show you is none of them have any artifacts in here. So we're going to look across some of these and we see that none of these have any artifacts attached to them, right? Zeros across the board. None of these IR controls have any artifacts attached to them. Now what we're going to do here is instead of attaching it directly to a control here, we're going to attach it to the process step, which is controls implementation. So I'm going to take the artifact. We're going to add the artifact in. We're going to choose the file, which we're going to pretend that that SOP covers all IR series of controls. So this covers all of our IR series of controls. I am going to classify this one as unclassified. And here we are, unclassified. This covers all of our IR series of controls. and we will click the Save button. So here's our SOP. And the problem though is that it's still not attached to any of the IR controls. So we have this one artifact that's up here, but it is still not assigned to any of the IR controls. So what we're going to do is we're going to fix that. Now how we fix this, now that we've attached this artifact in here, is we're going to go back out. We're going to go back to our general information, which is where all of our project artifacts go. We're going to go back to Manage Project Artifacts, and here is our SOP. So we have our SOP1 that covers all IR series of controls, and right now it's linked to one thing. The one thing it's linked to is controls implementation. So we are going to edit this control. We're going to use the gear icon here, and we are going to edit this SOP. Once we've edited this SOP, we're inside here. We're going to scroll down here, and we can see that we can associate controls to this particular SOP. So we're going to choose this Associate With button. Once we click the Associate With button, we have all 796 controls of our project here that we could associate it to. However, we know that this is only going to be for our IR series of controls. So we are going to go with IR series of controls. So this is all of my IR controls, all 52 of them. Now that we have all of our IR controls, and these are the only ones that are showing up, just the 52, we're going to select all of them. So this is going to put a check mark next to all of those controls. And then we're going to click our Save button. Now this has been associated with, and we can see it has been associated to 52 controls. We'll click our Save button again. And now SOP1 has 53 links to it. When we click on this, it lets us know that this is associated to controls implementation, but it is also associated to every single one of the IR controls as well. Now this looks pretty good at this point here, but what has this done to our actual controls implementation? Well, let's go back and take a look. So we're going to go back to controls implementation. So back to security controls, back to controls implementation. We're going to do the same thing as we've done before, resorting. Now this time we're going to go back to my controls so that we can look at those IR controls. And now let's look at the IR controls here. There's an artifact attached to it now. And that artifact is the SOP. Same here, an artifact SOP. And as we scroll down through here, every one of these IR controls has an artifact attached to it. And it's all the same artifact, the SOP1. Now, once again, the reason why we did this is so that SOP1 only shows up in our artifacts one time. So we don't have 52 versions of this same artifact in there. We have the artifact in there one time, but we've associated it to multiple controls. And we can prove that again by simply going back to our Manage Project Artifacts. I'm using the History button now. So we'll go back to Manage Project Artifacts. And we can see here that the SOP1 is only in here one time, but is associated to 53 things. One of them is controls implementation. The rest of it is the 52 artifacts. So that is how you can attach one artifact inside of Xacta 360 and then associate it to multiple controls at the same time. All right, everybody, so that's going to do it and wrap up our controls implementation series. I hope everybody has learned quite a bit about working with controls implementation, from the basics to working with my controls, exporting and importing back in your controls using a spreadsheet, and also now working with our supplementary documents or our project artifacts. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you around the AFIC.
For more great content, make sure that you like and subscribe to our channel to get the latest Xacta tidbits.